just excited though.
As am I. Here we are again.
Yeah, we're here again. Well, off camera, I know we were talking about getting too close to the mic. I don't know if you ever listened to that Prairie Home Companion, that show. I was on NPR for a while.
I think most of my knowledge comes off of times you brought it up on this podcast.
I have brought it up.
Possibly.
Yeah. Well,
with good reason, though. They have legendary soothing voices, don't they?
Well, I think it was something, you get nostalgic for, that is it Garrison Keillor, right? I mean,
actually, come to think of it, half my knowledge is from you, half is from, I think, Portlandia. They made a bunch of spoofs on it.
I was going to say, it's really, the soothing part was the voice, but it's really just the sound of his nose hair. I think I might have mentioned that. But it's just man, it's back off the mic, in a sense. It's more just sit up, because he was in it with his nose. So, now I'm going to be careful to sniffle off.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We got to experiment, and I'm always trying to change the style today. No headphones and even different stands. This is a different setup.
Yeah,
get a different performance out of you. But I'm sure it will be of excellent quality. Joe, welcome back.
Thank you, James. Good to see you, buddy.
Absolutely. Close to the 4th of July. We got a lot of exciting things happening this summer.
Yeah, a lot of exciting things happening. Some exciting things happened already.
It's true.
Steely Dan last weekend.
Oh, dear Lord.
Epic.
Oh, my God. It's nice, and it's almost a curse to have such a peak summer memory happen so early in the summer. Right. Now everything has to live up
exactly
to seeing Steely Dan.
Well, living up to raging while sitting down on a lawn. You know what I mean? Oh, my God.
Yeah, we were sprouting out of the ground like mushrooms.
Yeah,
it's just how it worked out.
It was incredible.
I just heard their first album came out 50 years ago. I didn't realize it was an actual half century.
Hey, but we were I think there's all these old acts are kind of gaining a second wind on TikTok and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for what's the weird Hanks brother? Is it Chet?
Yes.
Yes, Chet Hanks.
Colin is the actor.
Right.
Chet Hanks is the one that has culture appropriated the Caribbean accents, what have you.
I think he's probably going to come out with a Smoking with the Boys Upstairs drop, And
he was in the last season of Atlanta.
Really?
He's in the most recent season.
I haven't dug into that yet. I've seen a few episodes, but I've heard it.
He's got a quick cameo. Pretty funny.
Huh. But it's he's inserted, I'm sure, as a symbol of what you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, pretty
in
much.
Atlanta. Okay.
Pretty much, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I've heard it described, and I always get a little weirded out when people use the word surrealism after, I don't know, 1920, but it's just the surrealistic element. I get it, but they used to be trippy. You know what I mean?
Yes, true.
Surreal.
And nowadays,
it's you're trying to get one over on it. It's no, I went to art school, man. Unless I see a handlebar mustache, that's not surreal.
No, that's true. And even in the modern era, it's what is surreal anymore at this point, right? Everything's been remixed to oblivion.
Not to mention our reality slowly eroding day by day.
Right.
What is reality?
Right. The 4th that we mentioned is 4th of July week, basically, and it's supposed to be a time you celebrate freedom, and our freedoms are being taken away by the day. True. In this podcast, we somehow, the most surreal thing that's ever happened, you brought up the third most famous Hanks actor in the family. I don't even know what is happening anymore. Who is famous? What is right? What is wrong?
That's true. We've seen a lot of our, heroes fall in the last couple of years. And I don't even want to get into it because, I'll get canceled. No, I'm kidding. I think that's how you should be judged, though. Wouldn't it be kind of interesting if we just said, hey, of all the people who've gotten canceled, how many of them were you a fan of? That's a new social score.
I'm stunned there's not some sort of screener on social media. They can give you someone's consciousness score. How many problematic people do they follow on Instagram?
How many Louis C.K. tweets did you like? You know what I mean?
Right. Right. It's one thing to be judged by your own content, but a lot of people are lurkers,
Yeah.
They specifically knew how the game was being played. I'm being watched. There's no way I'm going to let people.
Well, yeah. What do you think about that? Because when, I remember Facebook when you had to, couldn't get on Facebook unless you had a college email. You could log in,
That's why I went to college.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd planned on the trades, but like I said, if I'm gonna be able to poke people, sign me up. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, it's just interesting to see because the hot thing was always like, well, don't post any pictures of you having any fun whatsoever because
Right.
your employer doesn't want to see evidence that you can have fun.
This is back when photos were 3 megapixels too, and you couldn't even tell what was happening in the photos.
Plausible deniability. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like I said, back to reality or the lack thereof. We've totally transcended that, period in our lives. We're no longer anonymous. Here I'm recording my thoughts, and this is going directly out to the universe.
That's right.
But I actually do it for a different reason. I used to do it to, make friends, get likes. Now I'm actually manifesting. This is to you, the universe. I'm expecting repayment. So
Absolutely. I think I'm gonna at one point go through the podcasts and try to see what everyone's bucket list ideals, aspirations are, and try to keep reverberating that out into the universe if at all possible. I mean, again, a lot of this stuff, we just got to wait for the infrastructure to be built around us. Like,
that's true. I wouldn't count on any infrastructure being built whatsoever.
By infrastructure, I mean Chrome extension.
Okay, yes. There we go.
By infrastructure.
What are we? Is it Web 3, Web 4? What are we up to now?
It's 6.5, believe it
6?
or not. It's like the Harry Potter station. It's it's kind of magical. You're not quite sure how to enter it. Or what's the platform, 12.5, 13?
Something like that. I mean, I actually, this is an unpopular thing, but it's part of my evolution as a person. Like I was not a fiction guy. I was into the facts. Like how does stuff work? I got that. Like kind of the problem with people who read nonfiction at a young age and have an aversion to fiction is they make the worst political junkies, though. Because the thing is like you're used to read anything you read has like, oh, this is probably true, right? And I think there's just a lot of other people that like, could fall victim to that. And I don't know if I'm one of them. That's why I only listen to political opinions because I'm more likely to be like, that's bullshit,
I see what you're saying. So if you read more fiction, it maybe sets up a better BS detector, or at least keeps your guard up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you have to be discerning at some point in your reading to the fact that something's not really real.
It does get a little problematic, though, when you want to see the next season of this fucked up season we're in. We're like, oh, man, I can't wait to see what happens, in the next election, because this last one was like, whoa, who expected that?
Speaking of elections, there's an election on Tuesday in Chicago, and it seems like not long ago we were sitting for the presidential election in the backyard.
That was
even still during COVID times, dressed up on Halloween.
Yes,
a year and a half ago.
I really am glad that my views are out there for that, because I would probably still stand by most of them, and if there were anything that I disagree with, I'll just pass it off as a joke.
Of course, it's fiction.
It was meta commentary meant for the metaverse. So,
as was the time in 2020, you had most everything people said was an NFT, or
well, that's true.
It was going to be an NFT. It was going to be.
Are you going to monetize any of the GIFs of this podcast?
Again, this is where the Chrome extensions come in.
Yeah.
It's going to clip, the motion in the video that seems to be the most interesting to someone.
Well, so the other thing that's like, my sister's a voiceover artist, and last year she got it's like a service that you can basically, it's like a deep fake service where you can record a sample of your voice, and it can essentially give it a transcript, and it'll
this
read.
Is the script.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was telling me about this.
Yeah, but the thing is like, I feel like you have enough content from me that you could really be booking, voiceover gigs.
Here's the thing. It's over for everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
It's totally over for, if you've been on a friend of a friend's Facebook Live and they have 20 seconds of you yelling in the background one time, they have like a source sample. And I think people we should actually talk about go back to the Facebook thing you were talking about back in the .edu era and how it felt sharing from then to now. Everyone, it's over. Privacy's totally over. I mean, whether you like it or not, whether it's something that you put out there in the universe, like this podcast or not, you're sampled heavily.
Let's put it to the test. I'm going to take my pants off, and we'll see if he can blur it out in time. No. Privacy is dead. We don't want it anymore. I mean, without we got to save, the court rulings for later. But
it's true. The funny part in that, and you all know, I mean, especially the video viewers, we're not even wearing pants. You
right?
Can't even,
exactly.
You can't even tell. But
this is not a table; it's actually a black censored, little block there.
right. The censor bar.
Yeah.
I mean, I acted like the headphone was a big revelation. Not wearing headphones, not wearing pants is really what takes you artistically to the next level.
Well,
makes you feel like you're really on edge.
Well, I think that's really interesting too. Is like as an artist, partially like there's Toro y Moi. Have you ever gotten into him? It's like
heard a little, not huge super fan.
Yeah, it's like kind of chill wave, and that's probably dating me. I was there for the summer of chill wave, like 2011.
You already said you had a .edu Facebook account.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Go in at this point.
Hey, but there's kind of like this lyric in one of his songs I've kind of just like come across and like has had some resonance, but it's like I think it's like, does sex even sell anymore? I think I've seen it all. But like there's something about that I think is actually a pretty appropriate point of where we're at in culture too, especially if you live your life online. Because it's like as much as things get vented publicly, even Twitter, which is not really mainstream, like
it's not.
You know what I mean? Like the people on Twitter, like sure, you probably have a Twitter account. You might check it when there's a riot, when the tornado sirens go off, or like there was a shooting on your block, and you're like, were those fireworks? And you're checking like the CPD scanner thing, and you're like what's going on? And I'm like, but then you get on there and then you start reading. But my point is like Twitter is like this sanctioned forum that we think of as like the polite society of social media. But when you read it, you don't think of the people who are posting on Twitter as being online degenerates like yourself, right? Because the thing is like you also consume the crap out there, the lowbrow stuff, but it's just you might not have that on your Twitter profile, right? People segregate the types of content they put out there based on what platform they're on. So
absolutely. No, it's tailored to the personality of the media purveyor. And you mentioned the type of people on Twitter. I mean, it's largely the louder voices, the marketers.
Yeah.
The folks that...
The louder bots,
It can be. Can be. Try to get Elon off the hook on this.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, it's a certain type of the population, though. I mean, my favorite thing to say about Twitter is marketers talking to marketers about marketing.
I like it. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
it's got a zing to it.
It's not the average Joe.
Is that a slur towards me? Like I don't know. As for all the Joes out there,
you're the least average Joe I've ever met, though.
Well, thank you.
You're exemplary Joe. You're
above average Joe. I feel like that could be. I don't know. Like. My mind works like one of my favorite things to do is come up with band names.
Oh,
but
same.
Like,
yeah.
Even just like good slogans. I guess it could go for podcasts. Like I think, Above Average Joe, I think would be a good podcast name. But like I don't see myself as that mediocre. Like I would say exceptional is probably, on a good day it's exceptional. But
I'm trying to think what I want to go alliterative. I want to say Jovial Joe, or
Oh, I like that. Go ahead.
Get clever. Say Jalapeno Joe, right? Like technically it starts with the J, but it sounds totally different.
I like that.
Speaking of old media, we mentioned Steely Dan earlier. Classics, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Dodgeball, I think, came out also 20 years ago recently. Had like the 20-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And Average Joe's was the name of the team in
That's
Dodgeball.
Right. That's right.
So that's kind of, that vein has been struck.
That's wild. Well,
a couple decades ago.
You know what's interesting, though? Like with that movie, I think I've rewatched that, but it was on TV. But and I think this is kind of
does that count as fiction? So you said
you
didn't consume fiction.
Well, I mean, reading fiction. Well,
joking.
I mentioned that because we were making the Harry Potter reference. My point was I did not read Harry Potter. I've never read
damn
it. Like it just didn't catch me at that time. But I'm on like a fiction streak, audiobooks while I paint. But the thing is like it's been there. It's like it's embarrassing to get to a point where you've read enough other fiction to where they're like, more stuff that you like. And it's like every week when I finish new books, like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I'm like, no, I
They're hitting
don't.
you with that?
Yeah, they're
Come
like,
on.
they're like, you know, you're gonna like it. I'm at that phase where it's like, it's kind of like getting into Zeppelin though. Like, you know, you hear like Dazed and Confused, you're like, whoa, what is this? This is sick. And then it's like you get into the, you know, album, and then you're like, wait, there's like 8 more. Oh my God. But you think that the rest of music is like that. You know, like you have this back catalog you can just like have immediate access to. And so now a buzz band comes out, you're like, whoa, this track's amazing. And they just have an EP out, and you're just like, I'm gonna forget about these guys in 2 weeks.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You want to have something out there for people to sink their teeth into.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder why they keep hitting you with Harry Potter. It doesn't make any sense to me because you're in your early to mid 30s.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you haven't hit it at this point, why would you be hitting it now?
I'm wondering if
Even if you had a kid, you wouldn't be hitting it, I think, for another 5, 6, 7 years. Like,
I think there's
not going to play Prisoner of Azkaban for a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, like that's the other thing. I haven't seen any of the movies either. I've lived in a cultural blackout for Harry Potter, and it's okay. Like I'm not saying like, but you know, I read Lord of the Rings over the pandemic, right? But I saw all of those movies because those were big. But I saw that as more like a higher form of like, you know what I mean? It's not quite the, you know, it's not kid stuff. It's not baby stuff. You know what I mean?
No, of course, because I think the main fan base for Tolkien was 40 plus male virgins. No,
Well,
right. So it has the least to do with
maybe that's
childlike
part of
audience.
it. Maybe that's part of it. It's like they're just like, we see your trajectory, Joe.
No, it's funny because I hated Lord of the Rings and actually only watched like 1 or 2 of the movies.
Okay.
And never read them, what have you. But I was like a Harry Potter guy. Specifically, I did not find a lot of stuff that I wanted to read when I was younger, but for some reason I did gravitate toward Harry Potter. I was one of those. Like,
that was me. The first like fiction book I read all the way through was Jurassic Park in 8th grade.
Michael Crichton fan.
Yeah,
Nice.
Big Michael Crichton fan. But I mean, I know what you mean. It's like it's whatever hooks you. But I think there's also a lot of self-branding going on back then, where you're really trying to figure out like someone could casually say like, you know, think about how many things in your life that you haven't questioned, but somebody when you were like 7 years old said that's for babies, and you've never even thought about liking something because some other 10-year-old said that's for babies.
Were you more likely to be the person who was saying that's for babies or to hear that?
I don't think I have said it until now. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's actually could be a useful tool, right? But because sometimes I think some people need to be reminded, like adults in Disneyland, you know what I mean? It's like if you don't have a kid, right? Like, I don't know. Going there, if you've never been there, never going to shame anyone for that. But if like, the same thing with Vegas, right? Anytime there's a Disneyland like qualification, we're like, oh, it's like Disneyland for adults. It's like, that's baby stuff, right? You know, it's just like, come on, like move on from the diaper. Let's go explore. There's other things in the world besides, you know, Auntie Annie's pretzels and, you know, I mean, it was cool to smoke inside, but like,
I was gonna say, be careful what you say next because it already sounds great. It's
I know,
get a glaze and raisin pretzel from Auntie Anne's.
Anyway, but
I don't know. I mean, you're an artist though. You're a great artist, and they always say you got to keep in touch with your child side, right?
That's true.
Your young side. So I feel like that'd be all the more reason to visit Hermione and Ron and Harry down at Hogwarts and.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
just paint like you're a Gryffindor, you know, go nuts with that brush like you're a Slytherin.
Right. I think it's going to be interesting to read and or watch the movies when it's you're around so much that there's so much cultural like reference to it. You know what I mean?
You should go to Harry Potter World.
Oh, there's a world?
Yes, Universal Studios.
Oh wow!
I think they segmented off part of the park to being a Harry Potter land. So you should experience Harry Potter just by going to that.
Yeah, and it's like I am kind of like an anthropological like anomaly, right? They're just like I'm gonna get like a letter, be like, we're seeking people who've never read Harry Potter, But what's even more interesting,
You're gonna be
though,
recruited for studies. For
yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's like, whoa, does he see an additional shade of blue? You know what I mean?
I was gonna say we're looking for people to figure out what has ruined this generation. And
well, yes, that's true.
We're not sure it started with J.K. Rowling, but it didn't seem to be too far off of that time period when she started releasing those novels. Mass hypnosis.
Well, the thing is especially
creating Arrested Development for the millennial population.
Because she got in some hot water, right? You know, but see, that's why I'm worried, because I think really what it probably is sometimes I'll hate watch like Jordan Peterson videos or something like that. Maybe the algorithm's just like, oh, maybe this guy's like a conservative dude. We need to, you know, just come full circle with this guy, you know. But yeah, it's, again, I'm not trying to say that there's anything wrong with it. I can't judge it. There's not many things that I will deliberately say I'm not going to judge it because I haven't done it, because I'm known to go on record for things I've never done before. There's something fun about that. I like to create controversy sometimes just to keep the conversation going.
You're talking to a guy who loves television, loves the art form, but never got on the Game of Thrones bandwagon.
Yeah.
Was never in on that. Probably has a hard time with actually some of the bigger franchises, right? Some of the things that feel a little bit too obvious.
See, I mean, how about this? Do you want to make a little pact here?
If we can.
Before the next time, I will watch and read the Game of Thrones, I'll read the Harry Potter universe. You read the Game of Thrones, and then we'll have
Fuck that.
Yeah, dude, come on, man. I think that would be funny. That's content.
No, it is. It 100% is. But read? Do you know how long the Game of Thrones books are?
I'm not going to ask you to do that. I mean, like, half those books are about feasts, too.
You're reading like something with a 7th grade reading level. I'm reading something that's so hard this guy's going to die before he finishes the series.
But see, that's okay. This is what I'll say is the audiobook world, and this is the thing. This is another reason I was never into reading, is because people who are big into reading and are like, it's like somebody who only listens to vinyl. It's like, all right, you're cool if you believe that. I don't. But the thing is like, if you're going to gatekeep on like storytelling, which storytelling is always fun. But the thing, unless it's a bad story or the storyteller's bad. But the thing is like, if it's good content, if it's well written and it's entertaining, I judge an author based on like how many pages of bullshit he gets me to tolerate, because I want to know what happens next. It's like, you know, in like a song, right? When they kind of create dissonance before like a climax to make that climax a little bit, you know, punch a little harder. You know what I mean? Like,
are you referring to J.K. Rowling putting out a number of famous children's books and then eventually coming out as an anti-trans advocate? Is that the kind of dissonance you're...
Well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
her releasing like
yeah. Because the thing is, it's like
milk toast and easily consumable.
Maybe she's creating
material.
that tension because the thing is, she's infusing the future book with so much controversy and subtlety, you know, from the right. Anyway, I don't know. It's just I'm past my point of knowledge here. So.
I do like the idea of like us both like delving into a famous media franchise and then being able to compare notes a little bit. But I feel like we have to find something where both of us have appreciated that. I've read Harry Potter, but you haven't read Game of Thrones. Have you?
I did read over the pandemic. Audio, I listened to.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's also talk about the way in which the visual media affects our consumption of the written media, because I think that's also important. We talked about Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter.
Right.
And I think trying to sit through those extremely long movies when I was 12 years old gave me an aversion to the franchise that I wouldn't have had if I was not just wrong place, wrong time, too impatient, the year 2000 ADD generation type.
I'll tell you what. I would not recommend The Lord of the Rings. It's boring as fuck. It's
the reading?
Poorly written. It's just
Peter Jackson visual saga.
The reading is... the movies are more entertaining because there's something to look at while nothing's going on. Like, I'm telling you, it's just a long, winding story. The reason it had any value and the reason I finished it is because on Audible, it gave me 45 hours per book or something like that. And it was the pandemic, for God's sakes. I was just like, let me start a series, because the thing is like, I want to stay busy. I want to have my mind occupied, anything to keep me from thinking about, you know, reality.
Of course.
I'd rather be thinking about Frodo,
Of course. Sam, Gandalf. I got one or two more names, and then I'm going to have to...
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even trying to... I'm not a fanboy. I would say it's just, I read it so I could say, it's no good. You know what I mean? I think that's what's fun about being a reader is you can be a snob. It's for amateurs.
I read it. I heard it. I took it in,
Oh,
I like that you open your ear to fiction, though. I've been wanting to do that a little bit more. I have not done it much, but you seem to have found some real traction during the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Was there one book that like kind of snapped your old habits, or was it? Obviously, it was the worldwide pandemic that was threatening your life, livelihood, and social abilities. But
honestly, I'd say Stephen King made it. The nice thing about Stephen King is, first of all, the books are huge. They're long, right? But the thing is like that's kind of like as an ADHD person, I'm just like, I don't think so, right? And the thing is, reading, like you do have to pay attention to every word you read, right? Whereas like it was actually podcasts that got me into it because the thing is I can exercise some, like just my own opinion. I can zone out. But the thing is, it's like, don't tell me you're not going to know what's not going on if you zone out for a couple, 2-3 pages. You're going to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, and if you can always rewind. But the thing is like, there's a set pace. You know what's even more embarrassing is like all these books that I finished in high school, for AP English. It's just like,
why the quotes? Why the hand quotes?
Well, Cliff Notes, man. Okay. You read the choice sections, but
I'm not your teacher. Just tell me if you read them or not.
I didn't read. I read some of them. Well,
some
just
of the
like
sagas.
Some of them, But my point is that you download this book that you were just like, oh, fuck, I got to read this whole book like this summer, and then you look at it on Audible, unabridged version, and it's fucking 5 hours long in audio. I was like, that's insane, dude. Like, I could have had this done in 5 hours, could have knocked that thing out and probably enjoyed it. Instead, it was a chore.
That's true.
And I think that's part of it. But the older stuff I've been reading more because, like I did, like, Crime and Punishment, denser read, but, like, I felt like it's just really powerful and starting to be interested in some of the historical eras in which it was written or what it's referencing has been really fun. So, I don't know. I think it's just more another source of media that is not inflammatory necessarily. Like it's a little bit more contemplative. I can paint while I do it. And I don't have to listen to, a talking head on a TV.
I think it's a good call. You mentioned podcasts help you get into it a little bit. And then, of course, going from maybe some half-high comedian talking in podcast format to Crime and Punishment. Like that is that Dostoevsky?
Yes.
Am I saying that right?
I recommend it. It's
one of the best fiction authors anyone will recommend you. I mean, it makes sense. It's like, wait a minute. I now have this ability with AirPods, with the technology to consume audio content at scale in terms of number of hours. And I'm listening to Ari Shaffir talk about traversing Western Europe or something. Like I could be listening to someone who is from Europe or from like one of the classic periods in history that has put out amazing material.
Have you if you had to pick like your preference of like reading, what would you do? Like, have you found yourself? Are you
you kind of already talked about it. I've been one of those nonfiction people who has not read a lot of fiction. Harry Potter probably is. I'm not saying probably. Harry Potter is the most fiction I've read, both in scale and interest. Like I was into the characters and all that. I definitely grew up reading more magazines.
Yeah,
and just found myself attracted to short form or something that felt relevant to my day-to-day life, which lends itself to nonfiction. And I've tried to like dip my toe in a little bit here and there. Like, I recently started reading The Corrections.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Franzen. It's great. It was amazing. It's like, you forget that the word choice in fiction can be so much greater than nonfiction. Nonfiction a lot of times is written for someone who's at a ninth grade reading level, and fiction can be all over the board. I mean, it can be extremely dense and complicated with not only the subject matter, but with the words in which they build the universe or elicit the emotion.
Well, because like I think you're right about that, and I think it was something I like, books you can buy in an airport. Like there's usually like a catchy cover. It's like The Stoner CEO, How I Got High and Made $1 million. Something like that. You know what I mean? But there's like, I've just realized like not all books read like a Tim Ferriss book, right? It's not like a hustle and a scam and like a promotional thing, because like I've just found that there's a template that those like books use, where it'll just be like, studies have shown if you smoke 4 joints in a month, you'll find yourself to be more happy. In this book, it's about an exploration of happiness in which you can open your mind to new possibilities and seek productivity beyond your wildest dreams. Before I tell you the secret to my success, let me tell you the story of Candace. She lives in Boulder, Colorado, on a on the eastern slope of the mountains overlooking the plains of the United States. 4 years ago, she was working at a grocery store, drooling by the cash register. She couldn't even get food into her mouth. Her boss regularly cursed at her in a language she didn't understand. And then it'll just go through, like, I met her while I got my iced latte and had just finished a joint. And it'll be like they'll tell the story of how they met and changed their life.
Jumps right into a small anecdote.
Right. And it's just like, the thing is they have they took where they left off in high school with the 5-paragraph essay, but it's no longer a 5-paragraph essay. It's the same amount of content and meat, but they just, in each new paragraph/chapter, it's just another reason to remind you of the same sentence they said at the beginning of the book and they're going to say at the end.
Yeah.
It is literally just like a sledgehammer for one sentence the whole way. And I just find it to be like, sure, it can be motivating, but the thing is like, I just like, especially when you pay for it and then you finish it and you're like, I better be psyched up, but I still like, you know what I'm saying? It's not a guarantee. The only thing you guaranteed is that author just made $20, right? Like that's how it feels.
It feels sometimes like it's an extrapolated tweet.
Right.
Exactly. To talk about Twitter from earlier. And, in all fairness, it's true that you kind of need to mention something over and over for someone to actually hear it. Because the first time they might like intellectually understand what you're saying, but it's going to take repetition to ingrain that in you. And I think it's important to really get the message to hit home. So there's some reasoning in it. Yeah. But I mean, fiction, it incepts it into you, right? Like it can still convey things, but it doesn't have to just keep giving anecdotes about small-time cashiers or drooling diner owners or using gimmicks like maybe making the table of contents rolling paper. Right. In the case of the Stoner CEO, whatever gimmick I'm sure was involved in the spine or the book cover.
Yeah. No, I'm saying like this is an idea I have if you want, because we can hammer this thing out.
Is this Stoner CEO, is that a real thing?
No.
Okay, that's hilarious. Thank you, Tim Ferriss, for the inspiration, of course.
It'll be the month-long joint. Yeah.
Pop, nonfiction.
Yeah. Did you say pot fiction?
I tried to say pop nonfiction, but I don't know. The cannabis interest and cannabis creativity brought me there.
Yeah. Oh my God. But
I would love to develop it. I would love to develop that, and maybe we'll see how much time we have on this podcast left. We got 20 minutes.
We'll come back when I do the pitch. I've always wanted to do that, where they put the book out. Just on the thing, they'll be like, oh yeah, so tell us about this book, and then they pick one page with the picture in there. It's like them in high school. Like, oh, you were on the gymnastics team, Joe. Where are you? Oh yeah, used to smoke a lot of pot back then. It's like I actually didn't, but
they used to call me High Bar Joe.
Yeah,
I went on the low bars, but they knew who they were dealing with.
Oh my God. But I do find it interesting, though, just when it comes to breaking through. I think a lot of these books, though, you just realize it's just like anything else, right? You're trying to get something out there to make a splash.
Yeah.
And the reason fiction's not accessible is because it's not necessarily the reading level that I've noticed. It's the expectations the author puts on the reader, like to infer and to, like some of that really good stuff, like you have to match it with your own questioning and wondering. And the reason where it gets a little tough for me is it's like you compare it with like, watching a TV show. It's like that's going to play no matter what. It's all there for you. Like you don't even have to participate, really. You can just watch. But like
You can finish it pass out drunk.
Imagine if there was somebody in there that just repeated the same scene. Like, did you see what happened there? Like that's how I feel like some of the contemporary nonfiction airport books, business books are written. It's just like, don't you get it? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And
12-page chapters.
Right. Like, I don't know. It's like it just has the whiff of like Ben Shapiro about it or something. It's like.
It's so funny you mentioned earlier hate watching Jordan Peterson.
Oh, God, that guy is such a nut. But here we are on a, podcast medium, just talking trash. That's what it's all about, though. I mean,
It is. That's how he made his bones, right?
Oh, but
That's how he cut his
if you just grow a pair of balls, you'll be fine.
You've got to clean your room.
Yeah. Ironically,
I need to
he
work on that.
talks a lot about Disney princesses in his.
Does he?
He's like,
But Jasmine is not, acceptable to our Western culture.
yeah, but Jasmine's like, she's the king. Like that's anyway, not king, queen. Anyway.
Everyone watches Aladdin, but you need to be paying attention to the tiger.
Yeah.
The tiger is really where
Yeah.
the spirit of the story is.
Yeah.
Crouching tiger, hidden dragon.
Anyway,
It's not fair. He was born for the vocal medium. You are too. That fake stoner CEO intro you gave was hilarious. I can tell. You have that skill in the family.
yeah. There was. So one of the other things I've been thinking about is, like as a kid, we'd go on these road trips, like for family vacation, and it's not like my dad's not like a beach person. You know what I mean? He's like, I don't know. It's just hot. You know what I mean? And I get it. Like it does get hot, but especially the only problem is like where that translates. It's like he has like, hey, look, while we're on the road, let's hit this. We'll hit this. We'll hit this. And now it's like we have like one night, but we're in the car for like 4 hours a day, right? So you're just tired at every stop instead of like relaxing. But during those long drives, I would kind of tell these stories about, there was kind of a running like structure. It would be like, how did St. Louis get its name? And it would just be a totally made up story about, disenfranchised priest whose parish was failing and,
That's a muscle. That's a muscle to be able to just like, create a backstory and to sell it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
One of the recurring characters, though, was named Rich Dogmore, and he was a butter salesman.
Dickie Dogmore.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the crossover is, combining. I want to make adult children's books, right? So it's not a comic book, right? No speech bubbles. It's just literally like idiot level logic and the like one line per page, and it's like a drawing, but it teaches an elementary lesson about life, but it might have adult content ingrained in it, right? So you learn, the moral to the story. I haven't thought of any morals, but
This seems like a long way to monetize your desired pornographic drawings that you want to include, like a convoluted way to.
Honestly, though, so what's so funny is like a couple years ago, like as the artist in the family, got the big Irish Catholic family on one side, the big Polish and Swedish, most of them are Catholic too, but it's like the family parties, everyone, they're very nice. They always keep up with like what I'm doing, but it's interesting because like they'll think of like, oh, they'll come to you with like the most recent art-related anecdote that they've heard of. And it's not that frequent you hear something about art. You know what I mean? So I had an aunt come to me and she said, "Hey, Joe, I have a friend. She really is enjoying this new thing. Have you ever gotten one of these?" And she paused. Adult coloring books. I was just like, oh, wow. It was like, is that kind of like, in medical school, like they have those like coloring books where you like color in the anatomy? It was like, she's like, no, I didn't know there were those, but it's like, and then she was like, no, they're just like more complex. And here I'm thinking, it's just like, oh, wow, that's a intimate, you got to really get in there for the, details there. But it turns out it was less, I don't know, stimulating than I thought it was. I felt like I probably was projecting, but I always thought it would be kind of a funny thing is, like, you ever see those how to draw books, right? With
Yeah.
my kid, and there's a couple like steps, but I just thought it'd be funny to be like how to draw dicks, and it would just be like, but it would be an
There's a
art
market for
historical.
There's a market for this.
And the thing is it would be, all these like famous sculptures, right? And so it's like how to draw that particular one, the David and, and then you could have a section on how to draw the fig leaf too, in case you're,
How to draw the naughty parts
Yeah.
of the most famous pieces of art from all time. No, there's something there. There's definitely something there.
Oh, I'm just trying to find my voice as an artist. It's tough.
Those adult coloring books, they're like geometric shapes.
Yeah.
But they should be Grafenberg shapes. They should
Yeah.
be
Oh, right. Like, I mean,
you
well, what'd be even funnier too is if it was an ink blot coloring book. So you just had to like, but the thing is like they're all mysteriously shaped inappropriately, like on purpose. They're like, oh, these are all random shapes, but like, what does this remind you of? It's just like these basically like very graphic images. And this poor sucker who, like the psychiatrist who does that as a gag,
You could have different lines. Yeah, you could have ones that are pretending to be innocent, but then are somewhat explicit, and ones that are like quite explicit, but they're really kind of like for children, like kind of like you were saying. Like one is pretending to be the opposite,
Right.
at all times, which would.
But like you said, you have to, beat it into these people in order for them to understand it. Every page.
Repetition.
I mean, music is a lot of repetition too.
It's true.
But hey, I think. There's a lot of things that have been told to me over and over again. I still don't listen to, like look both ways when you cross the street. Like who does it?
Not easy.
Don't run with scissors. I don't know. There's just like a couple ones that you're just like, not today. Right?
Yeah.
It's optional. As an adult, that's one of the benefits of growing older is you can kind of ignore just like.
Well, some common knowledge made sense at one point in history, but now it doesn't. Right,
Yeah.
like humans are very risk averse, and you want to safeguard your reputation and obviously your productive output. But the people who are able to take the biggest risks often get the most rewards.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
Thinking about repetition, I talked about earlier seeing Steely Dan. I mean, he's been touring and at least profiting from making these songs for 50 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
So knowing what things to repeat over time and knowing
Yeah.
what things to skip.
Well, I think that's the other thing, just to tie it all together, is that, it's like the circle of life, man. It's never ending. Like that's through fiction. You just get a rhythm for life, So it's like, I've seen this before, It's not just a vague hallucination. It's like, I remind myself of Frodo when he found the ring. But it's like, where the fuck is that practical? I've never found a ring that could make me invisible. Fuck me, man. I would love to find that. But the first guy who found that would get arrested, right? For doing gross shit, right? Like that's not even a dimension of the books. He doesn't even talk about any temptation. Like what universe were they in? Like Frodo was just like.
I haven't read them. I don't know.
Anyway,
if the ring is really means something else, if it's a different hole he wants to stick something into, I haven't gone deep.
Yeah, like there was a lot of talk about that ring. Let's just say that I think about how many hours that guy thought about it. He invented his own language too. But just like what I'll say, last thing about the Lord of the Rings is too many songs. And I would say don't listen to it in audiobook because there's always like these like, you know,
What? There's songs?
and the hen came out through the sun. And it's like an audiobook version of some poor bastard having to read through these like totally nonsensical like tales of old in song. It's like worse than when the priest sings the mass, you know? It's so bad. It's
I did
so
not know that
fucking
was
bad.
part of the franchise. They have
Oh.
like little shanties that they sing.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know. Anyway.
that's
enough
a
of
lot.
that. Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, to have an audiobook author go through 87 pages and then all of a sudden have to hit a G sharp.
It's terrible.
That's asking a
Oh,
lot.
man. But yeah. Well, I know we did you know, life is a circle. I think that's maybe it because
The
the
eternal
repetition
return.
infers that it's like a wavelength, but we're definitely going backwards in our society.
It feels that way. I'm
know.
glad we finally got here. It took 45 minutes to bring up Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we
it's-
talking about Juul or Roe versus Wade?
Well, I was talking about Juul being illegal now. That's travesty. You know, it's
I'm not
easier,
trying to be
it's
cruel,
easier to
laughing
get a
at-
gun than to get a Juul pod these days.
it's
No,
true.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
true.
Hey.
You get your fingers blown off as a drone pilot, but
Yeah. I mean,
you can't smoke a tropical fruit or a mango nicotine.
yeah. I mean, I'm not recommending it. It's not for everyone. It shouldn't be for everyone, but I think it's just
It
one of
seems
those-
insane. I cannot believe we're even talking about this. The fact that we're screwing something up that seemed like it was set in stone, right? Like
Yeah.
vaping's better than smoking. It's like, no, keep smoking.
Well,
Not-
that's
don't
the
vape.
ironic part.
And you know, family planning or choice is better than no
Yeah.
choice. Again,
Right. They're
free country.
I've heard that in some states they're recommending smoking instead of, an abortion. It's just terrible. Like, I don't know. The world is going to hell in a
It's pretty crazy.
handbasket.
Well, to be honest, COVID, if it did show us anything, I feel like the main lesson I keep taking from the last couple of years is, wow, if you don't pay attention, if you're not careful, you can fuck up something that seems so obvious and so
Yeah.
settled in the past. Inoculations, immunizations, even respiratory illness or how
Yeah.
pathogens work. Like, it seems very obvious how you could mitigate certain scenarios to lead a healthy life. Like, it's somewhat settled. Oh, not so much. Not so much. Like, the culture war, I guess to put it simply, if it's a simple thing, definitely takes precedent over the more detailed and probably the more difficult descriptions of
Well,
a science
right.
or of what will lead to the best outcomes based on data or whatever other empirical
I think
result you're going for.
it's been pretty fun lately, just as somebody who I'm not saying I'm taking like a victory lap because it's not victory. I think it's just more I've been surprised with the number of people on this, like liberal mindset that are like, what? How can this happen? But the thing is number one, how much did it cost from an infrastructure or taxes point for them to just, Roe v. Wade gone? It didn't cost anything. It doesn't cost them a thing to oppress. It didn't cost them anything to make gay marriage legal either. So the criticism, I think, has always been one of confusion. But the thing is like every once in a while, when they feel like they need a little relief valve from a population, they can just like, oh yeah, we changed our mind. You're right. You guys deserve it. Enjoy it. Because the thing is like, if they actually were addressing things that we need, right? Like infrastructure, support, even if it's not, like an arbitrary, like debt forgiveness, like why is that the only option? Because like, let's say that I paid for my own school or I didn't go to college and I didn't go because I couldn't afford it. And then now you got a bunch of kids who went to school with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that get automatically, all right, I'm debt free. Well, what does that mean for the other population of people that could actually use that amount of money? Right. So it's like by forcing these as like wedge issues, they successfully avoid any accountability and any action that's meaningful to affect people's like material conditions in the sense that like, wow, you or I could actually have a fair shot of starting a business because I believe we're currently in a race to the bottom economically, right? We're not producing any value. It's like is the term like marginal cost, right? Like it doesn't cost any more to make, if I made one app versus like a million copies of it, right? It doesn't cost any more money to do it. And that's the same thing with with these ethical rulings. It's like, it doesn't cost anything, but it gets everyone pissed off. And they just put their thumb on that scale whenever they want to avoid a closer look under the hood, in my opinion.
No, it's a great point.
Because who would have saw it coming? I mean, and that's why I'm like, hey, if they started a war and did all this other stuff, they must be saying like, don't look too closely because there's other stuff on the way.
You're bringing up a lot of good points here. Like, if you could somehow calculate the headline to dollar ratio for a lot of these political issues, I would imagine that some have a much larger percentage than others, much larger proportion than others. Like, you mentioned the cost of what it takes actually to provide family planning or to change abortion law versus maybe changing an economic issue like changing the capital gains rates. I mean, one is going to be much greater in terms of its cost, whether it's decreased taxation or increased taxation, or maybe providing funding in the form of college education, which is another issue you brought up. It ends up being like wedge issues. But, there's so much of it that does seem to just be based on what makes people feel a certain thing.
Right.
Versus what will actually get the largest outcome.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a real problem.
Do you know any families, just specifically on the Roe v. Wade thing, just to hit that a little harder, do you know any other families who their favorite like family issue is pro-life, or have you known any families like that?
I mean, I grew up in a house that like was, a significant portion of my relatives and, family. Yeah, that was like the status quo. And
pro-adult coloring books and pro-life.
Yeah, well, exactly. No, I'm just saying is like I went to a Catholic grade school, right?
Yes.
Before my IPO when I went public for high school. It was very profitable. But it is interesting to me though, like how much influence something like that has. It's not to say I don't know. I think what's really interesting to me is like, I'm pro-choice in the sense that like I don't think it's any of my business to describe, or to proscribe what another person should be doing with their body.
Yeah, I mean,
right. But it's like you don't even need to be that like willing to put that out there in order to recognize how cynical it is that like with the gun ruling, the day before or whatever it was, right, where it takes the opposite view, right. It's not even logical. So I think that's part of it is like. I believe it's kind of like the opening shots and like, when you say cultural war, it's really a war. It is. No holds barred in the sense that you're just going for it. You're inflicting pain. It's a part of that. And I think that's where I think we're, you have one side that's playing for keeps. And I still think the frustrating part is the Democrats are, out there on the steps singing a song, God bless America of all of them. You're going to bring a religious song into this now? Right, it just doesn't make sense. None of it, like there's just not real action, and I don't think there's a unifying substantive vision for where the Democrats are going. So
it highlights a major difference between the two major political factions and their ability to either push an issue and get something done through game theory and hard action like Republicans versus talking about something and maybe creating headlines or maybe creating a way to feel about something like Democrats have.
Yeah.
Definitely different. And specifically, I mean, dudes need to let go what happens to their cum after they finish. I mean, I just saw that it's 51% of men support the Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. I mean, I have
overturned decisions. So we're breaking it down in terms of political parties, which makes perfect sense considering the breakdown along party lines. But it's kind of like a man thing too. I have met men that want to say, that feel that not that I have a lot of these associations, but just throughout my life, I've had discussions with people that feel like, they just want to be part of the discussion for what happens when conception occurs, which to me is crazy because I don't put a lot of the.
So, but like, what's interesting is like, I have a feeling you're going to see a lot of these arguments going to come back up again, because the thing is like that women's liberation movement really that was one of the crowning achievements of like second wave feminism, from what I understand. But at least that's the way I've kind of come to understand it. But there was this push of like equal rights, right? Like equal is equal, right? The thing is like if it's a woman's right to choose, it's a woman's right to choose. So like the autonomy argument is a principles-based thing, right? There's other people though, like that at that time when that law was written, I think there were some objections based over, well, if it's the woman's right to choose, okay, but if they choose to carry it to term and the guy does not want, right? Let's say, you know, it was a situation where it was like not intended, but the thing is like the man is still financially liable for whatever comes down the pike. I don't really have an opinion on that, but I think that that's associated
you call
with
them
like
pikes? Whatever
sorry,
comes down the pike? No,
yeah.
just kidding.
But I think my point
Let me keep
is
it light.
like these were, you know, like this part, you know, like the abortion argument was like something you talk about in like philosophy 101, right? You know, it's like you read a couple essays and it's an issue that like people are going to have to dust off because they don't think it was real for a whole generation of people, you know, and, you know, for the millennials, I mean, they're out of college for a while and they're starting families. But the thing is like what they're not talking about is like, why is the birth rate low? It's not because of abortions. It's because millennials can't afford to have kids, right? They're not talking about that.
That's the reason. I thought it was because the new wave podcast scene was so robust.
Right,
that
exactly.
nothing could live up to the ecstasy
Yeah, there's nothing like,
that the new media has been able to provide. Joe, we got to wrap, man.
Hell yeah.
We ended on a note that I feel like we could make a song for another hour about, which is tough. 50 years about, we could keep playing for 50 years on some of these topics. We do need to dust some of these things off.
Yeah. I mean, what I'll say, though, I just want to be clear is like I support more freedom. I think freedom of choice is really important, respecting people's autonomy. But I think I'll go even farther than that. I think it extends to far more, and it goes to equality in wages. It means, you know, organizing workers. It means coming out of the cushion we had. I think the cultural understanding that a lot of millennials grew up with came in a period of very high economic activity. And they just never had to question the structural stuff. And after 2008 even, they did a really good job of papering over that. And it's like I have friends that are my age that are like talking about how they're doubling down on their 401ks like without a concern, right? You know, it's like you're not thinking about it at all, or like, oh, I just bought a house. So it's like, it's so crazy. It's so expensive. Like, doesn't that sound familiar? You know, like, you know, I don't know. It's just all that stuff where maybe I'm just jealous, but I think there's another part of it where I just want to make it clear that I'm for widening the conversation.
No, I am too. And that's
freedom,
part of what the show is about, is widening the conversation and obviously on a never-ending basis talking about the way in which these playing fields continue to shift. So let's continue another time. Joe, thanks again, man.
This is great. Thank you.
Stay free out there. Take care of each other.
Man,
and
I
good luck.
I hope I don't sound like a libertarian. Or
no,
something.
that's for after the echo.
Yeah,
point.
right.
All right.